Welcome to the Bree Pod. I'm here with me, Bree. Today is June 1st, or when this episode comes out, it's June 1st, and it happens to be World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day. I did not know about this day until recently. And I think it's very good timing with all the talk we have had about narcissistic abuse, especially talking about the Depp and Heard trial. Which, don't worry, we're not going to talk about that trial here. This specific episode is all about narcissistic abuse and the education to help others and to help the awareness. So, how did this come about? Well, according to the nationaldaycalendar.com, World Narcissistic Abuse Day was dedicated to the education and support of effective change. As many of you know, narcissistic abuse is not like physical abuse. It leaves no physical marks. There's a form of a psychological and emotional abuse, and it is invisible and very difficult to prove. Yet the effects of this abuse are very lasting and harmful. One of the reasons why it goes unnoticed is there really are not many laws that can prohibit mind games, browbeating, or name calling because there's no proof. That's the downfall of narcissistic abuse. And World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day was established in 2016 to bring the world together to support those affected and to prevent others from ever experiencing abuse. Or at least the best attempt, because again, it's very hard, especially for someone who has a narcissistic personality disorder, because they will never stop. It is something that is ingrained in them, and there's a really good, I believe it's on the red table, there's a really good video on narcissistic abuse that I'll link in the comments of this. But anyway, to start off, what is narcissistic abuse? Narcissistic abuse, as we have said, is a type of emotional abuse where the abuser only cares about themselves and may use words and actions to manipulate their partner's behavior and emotional state. And it does not just have to be a partner. This can be any type of relationship. It can be family, it can be friends, it can be coworkers, it can be anybody. This is not just for people that are dating. And the effects of narcissistic abuse can vary depending on how long one endures this type of relationship. So that definitely comes into play on how it can affect you, as well as how you react to it. So let's talk about the warning signs. So I got these warning signs from World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day, which is also WNAAD.com. And I'm going to read some of the warning signs and red flags just for an example of what it's like to encounter a narcissist. Some of the warning signs that they say are they have the person that is a narcissistic abuser has a sense of superiority. For example, being highly critical or often judgmental about others. They have a sense of entitlement. Sometimes this comes off as confidence, but can manifest in subtle ways, like cutting through a service station rather than wait at the traffic lights or deliberately leaving garbage for someone else to pick up. They give out backhanded compliments, such as, "She has a figure like yours, slim but no muscle tone." In a romantic relationship, the relationship moves quickly. For example, they will shower you with attention, compliments, or gifts and say, "I love you," and very early on in the relationship. And just a side note to this, that's what they call love bombing, which is basically one of their biggest tools. And when I say they, I'm referring to a narcissist. One of their biggest tools is love bombing, where, let's say, you're starting to see the warning signs, you're starting to see the red flags. First, in the beginning of the relationship, they start off with love bombing. This is where they do all these nice things. You're showered, you're loved. And then they'll go to the red flags that you see, which we're about to talk about. And then let's say you start to catch on and you're like, oh my goodness, this person is hurting me emotionally. This is where a narcissist can notice that and they start the love bombing again. And that's kind of how the cycle goes for people that end up staying longer in a relationship or keeping that friendship or however that relationship is longer than normal. Um, and it is some narcissists can also, it's not to say that they cannot be a part of like also a domestic abuser. But in this case, today is strictly about a narcissistic abuser itself. But it won't, if you're hearing these signs and these flags and you're like, oh my gosh, this reminds me of either a person I'm with or a person that hurt me in my past who physically also hurt me, it's not shocking if it goes hand in hand too. But it's not to say that all narcissistic abusers are physical. So to go back to some warning signs, their stories don't quite add up, and you start to see little white lies. You may even tell yourself, I just heard them lie to their friend. It was just a little white lie, but he or she wouldn't lie to me. They have two sets of rules, rules that apply to them and rules that apply to everyone else. They may have unrealistic expectations of love and nurturing from others, but don't hold themselves to the same high standards. That's such facts. They have a lack of empathy and are unable to put themselves in the shoes of others. They have poor boundaries and may regularly invade your privacy, go through your belongings, or expect that you mind read their wishes and needs. They may be highly sensitive to criticism or any suggestion that they are not in the right. They have a my way or the highway attitude, where they believe that they know best and their way of doing things is the correct way and the only way. Initially, they can come off quite charming and charismatic, always knowing the right thing to say. I'm glad this warning sign is here because this is something that I happened to run into on a TikTok video recently, actually, where this woman was talking about how, you know, after you come out of a relationship, and again, it does not have to be sexual, it could be a coworker, it could be a family member, it could be anybody. It's not just to a partner that you're sexual with. She was saying that, people wonder why can't, like, after they've come out of this abusive relationship or after they put up their boundaries, it's like, why can't other people see it? And the reason why other people can't see this is because she said you have to remember when you first started that relationship with that person, in whatever way it was, they were charming, they were charismatic, they were love bombing you, they were sweet, they look like they're this amazing person, or they come off like that. So when you come out of the abuse and you start to see what's happening and you start to see the truth and you know that they're bull crapping you and everybody else, it can be very difficult to watch because you know that person, you got to know them, they hurt you emotionally, and everybody cannot see it. And the reason is because of how they're a chameleon. And one of the things that I need to add to that too is the biggest thing for a narcissist is that they have to have allies. So they do not like to be seen in the abuse that they do behind closed doors. They're not going to necessarily do in public because they do not want to be seen that way. They need their allies because eventually, when they turn on their victim, they have these people to go to and they could say, oh, this happened to me, and they kind of flip the script on their victim. So it's not shocking when people either think that they stayed too long, or it's hard to like let them go, or it's hard for people to see a narcissist for who they are, because they do come off as charming and charismatic, and they do know the right things to say because they're chameleons. So what are some red flags? As the relationship becomes more established, you may start to see some stronger warning signs, such as you may spot bigger lies. When you confront them, you never get a straight answer, or they will turn it around and accuse you of what they're actually doing, which that's what we call gaslighting, and which I do want to touch base on, because gaslighting, I think, is more so of it's been a term that's been out there, but it's more of a term that's been kind of like thrown out a lot more recently. But gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation in which the abuser attempts to sow self-doubt and confusion in their victim's mind. Typically, gaslighters are seeking to gain power and control over the other person by distorting their reality and forcing them to question their own judgment and intuition. Gaslighting is the perfect thing for narcissists because they make you feel like you're running in circles. And any little tidbit that I'm adding, this is coming from personal experience with a narcissistic abuser, where they will make you feel like you are crazy to the point where you're thinking, what just happened? And that's what they do, because you cannot defeat a narcissist. Like, they do not like when you come at them with a challenge. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But some more red flags. If you try to raise an issue with them, it becomes a full-blown argument. They may accuse you of causing the fight, or they may use the silent treatment as a way of punishing you for confronting them. Arguments feel circular and nonsensical. You're left feeling emotionally battered and confused. There is no resolution to the issue, no sense of compromise or seeking a win-win outcome. It feels like they need to win regardless of the issue or what's at stake, and you're left feeling unsupported and misunderstood, which is very typical feeling to feel with a narcissist, because at the end of the day, like I said, they do not want you to, they need to be in the right. They need to win. Even if it's something so simple, like it could be literally an Oreo, right? And you say the cream filling is white and the cookie is like a chocolate base and it's black. They will fight you all day long about how that is your perception and that is not the way that it really is. And you could be like, but it's in front of my face. Like, I clearly see this cookie. And they'll make you feel like I said, it goes back to feeling crazy. I mean, there is better examples of this, but even something as simple as that, I have been in arguments with a narcissist over something so simple, but it becomes something so big and they must win. They must be in the right. Another red flag is they may tell you something didn't happen when you know it did, or vice versa. This goes back to gaslighting, and it's designed to make you doubt your own reality and judgment. A great example of this was definitely with the previous, the very first relationship I was in, which had domestic violence as well. But my abuser was also narcissistic. And I remember there was a time that we worked at the same place at this time. We shared a car. And what we would do is we would take the car, because luckily the way that our hours worked for working is that he would work in the morning or he would work at night, and we would be opposite depending on if it were the weekend or the weekdays. So one of the days I happened to be on, I think I was on the morning shift or the night shift, but I had brought back the car to him. And I think I was getting done work. And anyway, he came to me the next morning, I want to say, when he got back from work. So this is the night before. this alleged incident happens, he comes back the next day and says, hey, there is a dent in my car, and one of my coworkers saw you take a cart and hit the car. Or like I either took the cart and hit it or I hit the cart. And I knew this wasn't factual because like I remember driving to work that day. I remember no carts, like no grocery carts were even near it because I was just a weirdo and like to park like way far away from anything that had to do with carts and people. Not saying I'm a weirdo, but I always tried to be particular because I never liked. I knew that the car that I was driving wasn't mine; it was his, and I never wanted to do anything uh to his car to hurt it. Uh, and anyway, so I tell him that did not happen. I remember what happened, and the dent was not there. Um, when I was done work either. Because the place that he said it would be, you would have saw it. And I did not see the dent at all. It was not there at this time. And a cart did not, I didn't just jam a cart into this car, nor did I hit one. But he was adamant in saying that his coworker saw me and that I was lying. And I remember like losing my mind thinking, no, that didn't happen. I know that didn't happen. I was there. And I like where I was, his coworker wasn't even anywhere to be seen or found. So we end up like fighting most of the day over this. And finally at the end, I do not know why he admitted this, but he eventually admitted, which they don't, this is not normal for a narcissist to do. They don't normally admit anything. But I don't know what it was. But later he said, yeah, I made that up. No one saw you hit anything. I just wanted you to pay for my car because I didn't want to deal with insurance or something. And I don't know if he told me it to like laugh at me because he thought it was hysterical. He thought that the way that I reacted was funny. He told me it was a joke, that I should be able to take a joke. And I did not think it was funny. It was, especially being accused of like property damage, you know? So that's just an example that I have out of the many of gaslighting that occurred. And I do remember thinking there was a moment for 1 second I thought, what if I'm wrong? Like, what if someone, like, what if I did accidentally hit a car and I just didn't know it? Or, you know, vice versa of me driving into a car. But that was not what happened. I was not wrong. Um, because later he did shockingly admit that, which I still to this day think it was because he used to think a lot of weird things were funny that weren't. Like they were degrading. So let's move on and continue with the red flags. Let's see. You feel like you need to ask for permission before making plans with others. They may try to control where you go or call and text and constantly try to check up on you, interrogate you of where you've been and what you have been doing. So this is not uncommon. This you may actually, if you're just recognizing these red flags for the first time, this is one of the biggest things that I feel like narcissistic abusers like to do uh, when you get interrogated, basically. Um, Sometimes they could even accuse you of cheating. Um, a lot of times, this is that point where it's very controlling, where they start to control you in all sorts of ways. And honestly, it happens so slowly that you don't even realize it. It's like that analogy that people use, and they talked about how when you put a, well, I don't know if it was about a frog, but I think they said when you put a frog in boiling water, like, well, it can't be boiling yet, but it starts off gradually and works its way up, and then it gets to boiling. That's kind of how it is with the narcissist, because sometimes you don't realize that you're even in it until it's almost not too late, but until later. Um, so another red flag is you start seeing less of your family and friends, perhaps because they openly prevent you from doing so through guilt tripping or threats of abandonment. Or it could be more subtle where they make such a fuss about seeing your family and friends that you start avoiding them so you don't have to deal with the fallout. You end up feeling isolated and lonely. Isolation definitely occurred when I was in a relationship with my narcissistic abuser because at first, again, it all feels very gradual. Like when when you start to see, like, for example, in my case, I saw a lot of his family, but I started not seeing my family as much. But he would he would like always say, "You always see your family all the time, and I never get to see mine." Even though that was completely not true, it was the opposite. And I always noticed in a lot of our fights, the things that he would accuse me of were the things that he actually was doing. So when he would say, "You see your family all the time," no, we saw his family all the time. And I wasn't allowed to see my family because I supposedly saw them a lot. And there were many times and situations where I wanted to stay late and see my family after certain events, and he made it very difficult and made me feel like I wasn't allowed, or it was a very weird situation, but it is very uh typical where they isolate you, because the thing is, it's okay for them to have their allies. It's okay for them to have people that love them and like them, but they can't have other people see the victim and see what they're doing to them, because if they do, they'll be found out. And the thing is, they don't want to be found out. They want to be the chameleon. So it's very unfortunate, and that is why you end up feeling very isolated and lonely, because you don't feel like, first off, you're questioning your reality all the time, and second, you're not even sure if other people understand because of the chameleon side of them. And then the other part of it is, it's a not something you want to admit either sometimes. So just know, though, if you are going through this, you are not alone. There are many people who have, unfortunately, or still are going and dealing with their narcissist in their life. So another red flag is that the relationship feels one-sided. Like you're the one who's doing all the giving, you're the one who's always, but also in the wrong, the one who's trying the hardest, changing the most or doing the most sacrificing just to make them happy, and nothing is enough for them. And if you feel this way, one of their biggest things is a lot of the times you may be wanting, so maybe they'll say there's changes that you need to make, and then you'll make them, but they will not make any changes at all. And then they'll still blame you for why the relationship isn't where it should be. So another red flag is you can't feel at ease or relaxed in their presence. You feel like you're walking on eggshells, waiting for the next time they lash out at you. You realize you feel a sense of relief when they aren't there. I think that this makes a lot of sense, because I feel like, especially dating a narcissist, it always feels like you need to be on edge because you don't know what they're going to be upset about. A lot of times, like I said, it could be something small as fighting over an Oreo and what it consists of. It could be something as big as an alleged, um, hit, like the car incident they talked about, where there was a dent in the car and he said it was my fault when it was not. there's so many different ways that you're always worrying. If I, like, for example, I remember he would come home, and we both had jobs, but I also was going to college at the same time. So, and then on top of that, I was doing an internship. So I had my job, college, and an internship. He had his job. And when he'd come home, he'd be very annoyed and angry about the house and that it wasn't clean and that it wasn't up to his standards. Um, and he would yell at me and say that, I should have done this. Um, so the thing that you try to do is try to get the dishes done so that you wouldn't get into a chaos or some kind of fight. But he'd always find something. It wouldn't, like, you would complete what. So let's say that argument happened, right? You don't want to deal with the wrath of your narcissistic abuser. So then you decide, okay, I'm going to do dishes. That way he won't be mad. But then it's something else. You didn't shut the door properly. Uh, your music is too loud when it was in my headphones. So many things like that have happened where you do feel like you're walking on eggshells and you do not know what they're going to be upset about and what they're going to accuse you of. Because I had even been accused of cheating, which I did not have time for, number one, nor was I interested in that. But it would I definitely get that red flag when they say you feel like you're walking on eggshells because you just don't know. Um, Another red flag is you feel like whatever you do, it's not enough. You're manipulated so that your flaws and vulnerabilities are exploited and used against you at every opportunity. You begin to feel inadequate, unlovable, and like everything is all your fault. This I can definitely attest to. I think that's the term. Because as like I said, in this relationship, it was more so mental abuse and later it got toward physical. But the mental abuse is, I had been with this person for 2 years. Um, and in the beginning, it was beautiful. It had that whole love bombing vibe. You're showered with gifts, you feel loved. Um, but as time went on, it's like that analogy I discussed about the boiling water, you know, it was little digs. It was little things about nitpicking my outfits, nitpicking the way I talked, how I, walked. It was like everything. And it got to a point where, like, even with my teeth, actually, is a good example because one of the biggest flaws or things that I have never liked about myself was my teeth. And anything that I felt that I didn't like about myself or there was a flaw about, it was always addressed in some manner, whether in a fight, whether just him being quote unquote nice. Um, he'd always make comments, and I would always think, like he used the stuff that I used against myself. Um, and on top of that, you do start to feel inadequate, uh, because then they start to compliment other people and be like, wow, she's beautiful and look at how perfect her teeth are. Because they know it's like for me in this case, he knew it would get a rise out of me. And he thought it was funny. He anytime, like I said with the incident of the car, the way that he saw me get worked up and worried about this potential incident that did not occur, alleged, um, he thought it was funny to later say, "Oh yeah, you didn't do it. I just wanted you to pay for my insurance for whatever." I don't even know how that happened. He didn't admit what he did, but like he thought it was hysterical. And so anything that has to do with your flaws or vulnerabilities, narcissists love it. They eat it up, especially if you get upset. They eat it up, especially if you're in a fight, and I mean like a verbal fight, and they see you are upset and uncomfortable. There's a lot of you know, reaction that they're looking for because at the end of the day, it's a control factor. Um, and the reason why we are discussing this is because I do want to help educate because there are people that are being gaslit and there are people that have a narcissist in their life and it's very hard to prove to other people like, hey, this is happening to me because like I said, they are chameleons. They need allies. So when you're in the public version of that person versus the home behind closed doors are two completely different people. And it's why it's very hard for people to believe that something could be happening because they're like, well, I haven't seen that. You know, they're so sweet. They do this and do that for me. Um, and a lot of times they like to get allies to get involved in, your arguments. For example, with the person that I'm talking about, he always got his family involved. Anytime there was an issue and we had a fight, he would take it to his family and I'd end up getting into that fight again. Um, and I would explain myself. I felt like I was constantly having to explain myself. Um, and then the unfortunate thing from narcissistic abuse, the unfortunate, like, I guess, aftermath is you do tend to be more of a people pleaser. You do tend to be more codependent. Um, and it's because you're looking for the approval of other people. Because you learned in that relationship, again, it doesn't have to be sexual, it could be um, a relative, it could be a coworker, but for as long as that time frame is with that person, you learn that if you make them happy, then they won't be upset. And for me, unfortunately, it is so ingrained that I'm still to this day working on people pleasing, and working on putting up boundaries and setting them appropriately for myself, which is very hard. It's been very hard. And um, I've been using my therapy sessions to try to be better with it. But it's so ingrained to want to make people happy, to not want to upset them because of the abuse that had occurred. Um, let's see. I just wanted to see, how can I tell if my partner is narcissistic? Now, mind you, this does not have to be just a partner. This could be a friend, a family member, coworker, really any type of relationship out there. But a couple of ways to tell is one minute they appear loving and appreciative, the next minute they're putting you down, punishing you, or giving you the silent treatment. 2, they feel entitled to special or preferential treatment because of who they are. 3, they lack humility and will avoid admitting that they are wrong and blame you or others instead. You get a sense that they are always trying to gain the upper hand with you. They always talk of themselves in a glowing, grandiose terms. They never admit their problems or insecurities. They say words with such conviction, but you get the strange feeling that they don't represent the real truth or are a distortion of the truth. It's hard to feel completely relaxed and good in their presence. They seem very agitated and angry when you are happy of your own accord, unless they are the source of your happiness. They often feel misunderstood by others. They appear wonderful to outsiders, but are often very mean at home to you and potentially the children. Uh, he or she doesn't seem to have any real presence or depth to them. They are most happy and delightful when you are admiring or adoring them. They are not honest or truthful. They will bend the truth to suit their own ends. They don't understand you at all. They have no empathy or compassion for you when you are distressed or fear any of your feelings. You start to question your own truth and reality and are being told how bad or wrong you are with such authority. You're starting to believe their criticism that you are not good as a person. You notice when you are away from them with other people, you feel so much better and happier and have fun and can relax. They tell you untruths that torment you. You find yourself in discussions that are so twisted that it feels like you are losing your mind. You often find you are trying to justify yourself and explain what you think reasonable people already know. They say cruel, uncaring, and dismissive things without any empathy for the hurt they are causing. They make agreements that they don't keep and then do not acknowledge ever making them. They often feel um, that it's all their way and is not interested in finding any win-win solution. Compromise is not a thing. They feel that um, you often feel that they are against you and that you are being cast as the enemy. You are blamed by them for their problems or any problems. They undervalue any contributions you have made and overvalue their own. They never or rarely apologize for anything they have done or take accountability. And one of the other things or ways to tell if you're if the person in your life is narcissistic is if you feel like you have to have receipts. What I mean by that is one of the sayings that we use a lot lately is, "Oh, I have the receipts." It means that you have proof, whether it be text, email. It has to be written, really, or because it has to be a tangible proof. I feel like because if it's just word, then you call that hearsay. So it has to be like a text or a picture or an image or something. If you have that kind of proof and you have the receipts and you collect receipts, that is a part of your own way of trying to prove that your reality is not skewed. And I have many times where I have had to say, not had to say, but I felt like I needed to have receipts. And to this day, I will keep things because I had been questioned so much and felt my reality felt unreal. Where I had to start saving things to prove like this is it, or I felt like I had to. So if you feel like you have to have receipts and proof, that is another sign that you have or are in a relationship or have been in a relationship with a narcissist. Um, it's these are some feelings that you may feel it went in this how you feel in a relationship with a narcissist. Um, when you're attempting to have one, it's basically very disappointed about who he or she seems to be now compared with who they were when you started the relationship. Confused because of the lies and half truths that are continually fed to you. Hurt and shell shocked because of the so many ways that you have been or had been belittled, criticized, and have been blamed. The relationship feels unrewarding because it never feels like they are really there and not possible to share any real intimacy with them, including emotional. You feel unhappy because he or she always tries to undermine the happiness you create for yourself. Untrusting of yourself because you don't know what to trust anymore, wanting a real happy relationship, but always feeling it's not available to you. Intensely frustrating when they can't be reasonable or honor agreements or work with you for a win-win solution because there is never a win. and despair at the realization that they don't really care about you or how you feel. They only care about themselves. So, what can you do if you are with a narcissist? Um, and truly, that's kind of a difficult question because one of the things that narcissists do not like is being ignored or not having the attention or um, unable to control you. So it's not very easy to get out of that kind of relationship because they make it very difficult and hard. Um, but they're the best ways, I guess, to try. Like the thing is for me is I how I got out of the situation I was in was truly just it kind of worked out. And what I mean by that is the time that we broke up, he had found, which is through a crazy way, but he found a way to get into my Facebook. He read a message that I had wrote to a family member, and he took it as though I was cheating, which really in the message what I had said was that back in the day, prior to our relationship, I wish I had went with the other guy because there's another guy that I was interested in, but I instead chose to date the guy that we're discussing now. Um, so he took that as like me cheating and wanted to kick me out of the apartment, lied and said he called my family to come get me, which I knew wasn't true, so I instantly called them. But basically, that was kind of the way that I got out was when he threatened to kick me out, I took that chance and ran with it. Called my family member, they helped me get out, and friend, because later he started stalking me, sending me messages, begging me to come back. Cause like the thing is, when they're angry, I just feel like it was a lucky moment because um normally, it'd be like some way to coerce you back into it. And luckily I had the support system to help me get out. Even though it was 2 years later, it's still I had that system to help me get out, but it's not easy. Especially if you have to work with somebody like this, or if they're a relative, or if they're a friend. Um, it can be very difficult on how to go about the situation. And unfortunately, because I did date a narcissist and I do have a people pleasing tendencies, I did um basically attract a lot of narcissistic be- people into my life. And what I've been learning with therapy is the best way to work with a narcissist is to put up your boundaries if you can. Keep a distance. Do not give them any like reaction because they feed off of your reaction, whether it be good, bad, sad, however. Um, and for me, I have personally felt that therapy has been very helpful to help me recognize the signs of a narcissist as well as people pleasing tendencies, and how I've learned that people pleasing is actually more harmful to us than anything else because that's how we tend to let more narcissists in because they crave somebody that is people pleaser that wants to make you happy because they know that your goal and your mission for people, so you just want them to feel loved and happy, and they need that, and they'll use that. It's not to say that you can't have that in a relationship because it is a beautiful thing to love someone and care for them, but it's when it's being used and you're getting nothing back that it can be awful. So to me, World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day hits home very deeply. Um, there's so there's so much to talk about with it that I do think I need to eventually have almost a series on it, like I did with domestic violence and abuse. Um, because it just happens so often, and by being a victim of a narcissist, it really affects your life. And truly, the best way that I've been working on this for myself is has been therapy. And I'm also thankful and grateful for. I have no idea how I attracted the man that I'm with today, my husband, because I was surrounded by narcissists, but somehow I was able to attract such a beautiful soul like my husband, and I'm very grateful for that because I don't I it's a lot mentally and physically what the abuse can do to you. Um and like I said, I'm still in the recovery stages of learning how not to be such a people pleaser, and it's very difficult to not think about um making others happy or not wanting a situation to escalate because you just remember the the lashing out, the blame, all these things that have happened. But if you are in this kind of relationship, I would definitely reach out if you can to someone that you trust to help you because, like I said, it's not easy to get out of a relationship with a narcissist. They don't really make it easy. Um, and the one thing that we want to do sometimes as a victim of this kind of abuse, we wish we could just give it back to them or lash out on them or make them feel how they made us feel to a certain degree. But the thing is, you can't fight a narcissist either. You'll never win. I've tried. Not physically fighting, but you try really hard. No matter how smart you are, no matter what, you can't win. And it's not to say that it has anything to do with who you are as a person. It's just the fact that they don't allow that to happen. And if, let's say, you do get an upper hand, quote unquote, on your narcissist, however that is, whatever manner, they will come back tenfold and make it worse. Um, which I don't know how else to explain that except it has happened a lot. And they don't, like, for example, the passive aggressive remarks back or um, the allies that they get themselves, that they're able to get themselves. And next thing you know, the whole, like, you've got a bunch of people talking to you about a situation that they had no business being involved in. But unfortunately, with that chameleon side of them, the narcissist, they were able to get someone to believe them. And they like to do the opposite and make you think that you are the problem and you are the issue and you were the one that was actually the abuser. So you can never win. The best way to win truly, or the quote unquote win, I would say for a victim is your boundaries and getting healing and help that you need for yourself, because that is actually the closest to closure of a feeling that you can get. And that's from my own experience. I'm everything in this outside of the red flags and warning signs is from my own experience. Um, everybody experiences it differently, but that is the advice that I would give if I were asked. But I'm not a doctor. So, um, that being said, if you're looking for more information on narcissistic abuse, there are many, many outlets and places with information, but the biggest one that I was reading from and I found a lot of really cool tools for is the WNAAD.com. And that's the World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day page. And they share a lot of amazing resources that are available. So, with that being said, you are loved, you are worthy, you are cherished, and I am proud of you. Until next time on the Brief Pod. I do want to add for those of you still listening that I have paused on text messages for now. I was sending a text message once a week that were motivational text messages. They're going to be on pause until potentially July or August, so I can see the interest level if I'm going to bring them back or not. So if you are missing the text messages, I'm very sorry. With that, have a good day.